This guy wakes up in a full metal cage. He has no clothes and doesn't know where he is. When he looks around, he sees a lot of similar cages with unfortunate fellows who are going to become slaves soon. But Jin actually isn't bothered about this whole scene at all, because when one bandit girl comes to feed them, he just casually stands up and tears through the cage like it's nothing. When the girl sees how easily he broke metal, she's scared and shocked, afraid he's gonna kill her. But instead of beating her, our boy heals her and finds out she's helping bandits only because they captured her little brother and forced her to work for them. So, Jin decides to deal with all those scumbags right here and now. He crushes the door and sends it flying with the first bandit all the way through, and he doesn't bother with the fact that he's naked at all. Jin takes them out one by one, leaving behind only piles of beaten-up bandits. The shocked bandits don't stand a chance. He is just too fat and strong for them. Finally, he gets to their boss, and this scum, despite being considered really strong in this world, doesn't even try to fight back. Seeing how our boy deals with the last bandits, he just begs him to wait and asks what he wants. Money and slaves aren't a problem, but our guy just finishes the remaining bandit and comes closer. This bandit boss just can't understand what is going on, and why he can't use his spirit powers, and why this naked guy is so overwhelmingly strong. Jin just looks at him like he's a pathetic bug, and this scumbag realizes he's really screwed, so he starts to run to show his last resort, a cage with a monster. And the bandit boss is sure our boy is cooked now, but when the monster lunges forward, Jin easily blocks his attack. Now this scumbag is really shocked. He's never seen a human block a direct hit from a monster with bare hands. Turns out that Jin has a superhuman constitution, and that's not all. Next he pulls out the supreme power in, and just obliterates the monster with an energy beam. And when it's done, he turns back to that scumbag to beat him properly for what he did to all those poor souls. But why is Jinsu strong, and how did he get this power? Well, it all started 100 million years ago. A massive catastrophe descended upon planet Earth, annihilating the entire human populace across the globe. The seed of this calamity took root when a mysterious virus began mutating animals, twisting them into otherworldly terrifying that were later dubbed corruptors. Within a few short years, the outbreak spread so rapidly that humanity lost 99% of its population to the devastation. The remaining remnants of humanity tried their absolute best to hold the front lines and fight back. Unfortunately, it quickly became evident that conventional warfare was entirely useless against these beasts. Driven by desperation, humans began experimenting on their own kind. Out of all the trials, Jin Shudu was the only successful test subject to show actual results. Alongside him, scientists engineered a countervirus comprised of nanomachines designed to restore the planet's corrupted environment. Armed with his newly obtained unparalleled abilities, Jin became the superhuman savior of this world, always attempting to protect the last surviving pockets of humanity. Ultimately, however, it was all in vain. They were simply too late, and eventually even the final human survivors perished. With no one left to protect, Jin's existence seemed stripped of its purpose, having failed the very task he was created for. Or at least that's what his scientist friend Kagura believed. Jim held a fundamentally different perspective. To him there was still a reason to keep going, even if he couldn't save the present population. He remained confident that his powers could benefit future generations. With the nanomachines already hard at work, purging the corruptor's influence from the environment, he was optimistic that the Earth would eventually be restored, and he was willing to wait for that day. Consequently, Kagura placed him inside a hibernation capsule designed to keep him alive for the centuries to come. While Jin slept peacefully in stasis, the monsters continued to ravage the planet. Yet as decades turned into centuries, and centuries blurred into millennia, the shift in the global environment finally began to compound exponentially. Those extraordinarily mutated creatures gradually began to deteriorate, making way for new species to thrive. This cycle of evolution continued for 100 million years, eventually bringing us to a scene where a trio of newly evolved humanoid beings is desperately trying to outpace a terrifying monster. The frantic survivors stumble across an ancient ruin, quickly duck inside to take cover. The relentless demonic beast barges right into the facility after them. Backed into a corner with nowhere left to run, the trio is essentially ready to become a satiating dinner for the creature. In a final desperate plea, the girl in the group cries out for help, wish for the village's guardian, the leader, to rescue them. Miraculously, her words are heard, triggering the awakening of our boy, who had been sleeping in the capsule right behind them for 100 million years. The ancient human unleashes an energy beam. Seeing the monster on the spot, the confused trio has no clue what the abyss just happened. And the situation only gets more messed up when a butt-ninja man pops out of nowhere. The very first thing this naked Chad does is look for his clothes, which are neatly preserved in an indestructible lockbox his friend Kagura had developed. After booting up the lab's ancient systems, he discovers he has basically speedrun 100 million years into the future. Although the passing of eons has corrupted most of the data, it's an absolute miracle the machines are functional at all. It appears the nanomachine virus Kagura created did exactly what it was supposed to, annihilating the corruptors which helped preserve the facility. He also finds a communication cube left behind by his old friend, though its contents remain a mystery for now. He then turns toward the humanoid locals, completely forgetting his manhood is just dangling in the breeze. Realizing there are literal kids staring at him in the buff, he quickly gets dressed, restoring the same fresh look he rocked millions of years ago. A short while later, he exits the facility with the trio, only to be instantly blinded by the intense sun shining above the horizon. Truthfully, he wasn't expecting such a vibrant sight. The view before him is nothing short of magnificent, a stark contrast to the apocalyptic wasteland he once knew. The kids immediately start heading back toward their settlement, insisting that their guardian, the leader, follow them. Our boy, on the other hand, is far too preoccupied trying to figure out exactly what kind of species he is dealing with. After all, humanity should technically be fossil fuel by now. These humanoids with distinct animal traits must be the result of millions of years of evolution, mixed with the continuous interference of nanomachines. Not to mention, these guys are speaking the exact same language used by humans eons ago, heavily implying they branched off from the exact same root. He introduces himself as Jin Shadu, requesting that they just use his first name in return. The girl with goat ears introduces herself as Hakama Phil. The koala-looking dude is Danpo, and the cat girl beside him is Shandy. Hakama decides to save the rest of the pleasantries for later and begins dragging Jin along, explaining that her village is just around the corner. She's incredibly desperate to bring their newfound guardian, the leader, home so he can fend off the current invaders. Tragically, by the time they arrive, the village has already been raided and devastated, with multiple settlements completely engulfed in flames. Shandy absolutely loses it at the catastrophic sight and rushes ahead in sheer panic to find her mother. As they survey the damage, Jin takes a moment to contemplate their dire situation. He immediately notices how flimsy the town's fortifications are. Both the boundary walls and the houses are constructed from simple wood. This detail alone makes it glaringly obvious that this new civilization is technologically way behind the human era he remembers. Pushing deeper into the village, Jin spots a woman actively fighting off a bizarre monster from just a single glance. It's obvious she's barely holding her own. It doesn't take long for him to realize that the creature she's facing looks identical to the corruptors for millions of years ago. Furthermore, the surviving corruptors aren't the only unusual thing here. Little Hakama apparently knows some kind of magic technique that makes her physically glow. Ultimately, her intervention proves unnecessary. Jin dashes forward and effortlessly knocks the living daylights out of the monster with a single devastating kick. Like moving swiftly, he scoops up the injured older woman in his arms and dashes out of the danger zone, leaving little Hakama a clear opening to deliver the finishing blow. Channeling her magic, she unleashes a tiny fireball that packs a massive punch, officially putting the monster down for the count. Observing the dead creature, Jin confirms his theory. The atmospheric nanomachines have indeed stripped these monsters of their legendary healing abilities. What he doesn't understand, however, is how a local girl was able to wield those same nanomachines. His educated guess is that these folks draw nanomachine particles directly from the atmosphere and channel them into offensive spells, much like he does. The glaring catch is that historically, only pure humans were capable of manipulating that technology. He directly expresses his curiosity to the woman he just saved, wondering if everyone in this era possesses such magic. She isn't entirely sure what he's getting at, but she clarifies that only a select handful of people can actually wield this ability. In their culture, it is believed that individuals fortunate with the supreme powers are the only ones privileged enough to use this magic. In their specific village, there are no more than 4 people who hold this distinction. Jin doesn't have to think too hard to piece it together. The supreme powers is just their primitive, fancy way of explaining nanomachine manipulation. Hakama rushes over to the older woman, who turns out to be her grandmother, anxiously inquires about the rest of the villagers, only to learn they have already evacuated. This statement washes a wave of relief over the trio, though the grandmother is deeply worried about why the kids returned to the dangerous village instead of evacuating with everyone else. After all, the beast they just fought was merely a larva compared to the massive adult monster currently terrorizing the area. Suddenly, a voice of reason penetrates through the tension, assuring the old lady that there is absolutely nothing to fret about. That giant invader she mentioned this. There is absolutely nothing to fret about. That giant invader she mentioned, this newcomer confidently claims he can slaughter it single-handedly. The grandmother is shocked to see these familiar faces back in the war zone and immediately questions the man about the other villagers. The blue-haired warrior confirms that the rest of the civilians have safely reached the shelter. As it turns out, the older man accompanying this blue-haired guy is actually Hakama's father. The two share an emotional reunion. Naturally, he demands to know where she ran off to. The girl honestly admits she went straight to the sealed door. Much to the grandmother's absolute shock, the older woman is furious that Hakama wandered into that godforsaken territory. According to local legend, the domain beyond that door belongs strictly to the guardian, the leader of the village. because little Hakama felt utterly threatened by the monster invasion. She explains she simply went to seek the leader's help. And, as she proudly points out, the leader from their legends is standing right beside her. Understandably, the grandmother is highly skeptical, flat out refusing to acknowledge this random young lad as the supreme protector. Even worse, based on his appearance, they assume our boy belongs to an inferior species, making the idea of granting him such a special title downright ridiculous. Stepping in, little Shandy tries to convince her blue-haired brother that Jin is the real deal. In response, her highly prejudiced brother is quick to dismiss her claims, pointing specifically to Jin's ordinary human ears. In their society, anyone who doesn't inherit distinct animal traits is classified as a lesser being. As far as this guy can tell, his little sister is just operating under a massive naive misunderstanding. Still, the little girl stands her ground, proudly revealing that this man easily defeated the invader chasing them. Unimpressed, her brother brushes the feet off, arrogantly claiming he could take down an invader just as easily. Turning his attention to our hero, who already looks utterly exhausted by all this unwarranted. The blue-haired warrior threatens the intruder, telling him to leave the village immediately because they have no room to accommodate a being of inferior blood. The apper just walks right past Jin, still running his mouth. He's so painfully full of himself that he voluntarily takes on the suicidal job of killing the giant invader all by himself. By the way, this arrogant bluehead goes by the name SARS. The grandmother becomes visibly distressed by the reckless spur-of-the-moment decision SARS just made. She then turns her attention back to Jin. Even though she still couldn't care less about who he actually is, she admits it would be incredibly rude not to express her genuine gratitude for him saving her life. Following her thanks, she asks for one final favor, to help escort the kids back to the safety of the shelter, while she goes to ensure SARS doesn't throw his life away due to sheer arrogance. Unsurprisingly, our boy flat out refuses to comply. They directly questioned his pride, and he certainly isn't going to just stand there and let them trample all over it. He decides he's going to make sure they realize he isn't some useless bystander, and he is definitely not an inferior species. The scene rightfully transitions to the nearby lake, which is currently harboring the grotesque, massive monster. SARS has finally arrived on the scene, and the dude doesn't so much as flinch before dropping into a combat stance. With his spear and body charged with crackling Zeus-like thunder, he executes a lightning-fast sprint toward the beast in an effort to counterattack. The vile creature quite literally uses its own offspring as projectile weapons. Luckily, these unnurtured slimy larvae are easy targets for SAR's electrified spear. With the path cleared, SARS capitalizes on the opening, leaping high off the ground to deliver a devastating slash directly across the villain's face. The monster screeches out loud in sheer agony. Of course, we all know it couldn't possibly be that easy, and we'd be right. To SAR's utter dismay, the monster's deep gaping wound immediately begins to regenerate. The sudden shock paralyzes the blue-haired warrior, leaving him wide open for a lethal counterattack he has no time to dodge. But exactly as expected, Jin intervenes at the last second, effortlessly blocking the massive strike like it's no big deal. SARS, the once unshakably arrogant fool, is suddenly hit with a massive reality check, and the show is just getting started. The monster leaps back to launch another strike with double the previous force. My guy, however, doesn't even grant the creature the opportunity to swing. With just a casual snap of his fingers, Jin casts a clean hole right through the monster's flesh. The cocky runt can only watch the spectacular display in stunned silence. Soon after, the rest of the group comes rushing toward the water's edge. They haven't even finished catching their breath from the crazy sprint before their jaws hit the floor all over again, watching our boy block the colossal monster with a single hand. As the monster continues trying to apply immense force, Jin genuinely starts getting bored of the exchange. Deciding to wrap things up ASAP, he grabs SARS by the way, and leaps out of the way. By the time the camera pans out, we witness the massive monster completely pierced through and through by Jin's energy. SARS frantically argues that big flashy attacks are useless if the monster can just infinitely regenerate. Thankfully, Jin has already taken that exact variable into consideration. This is precisely where the nanomachines come in handy, actively neutralizing the monster's cellular regeneration. The damage SARS inflicted earlier was actually quite considerable, but the cut was far too shallow to overload the creature's healing factor. By now, SARS is practically having a mental breakdown just processing the sheer possibility that this inferior guy might actually be their guardian, the leader. Humorously, Jin quickly denies having any of the supreme roots that would qualify him for such a grandiose title. What he does know for a fact is that the entire reason for his continued existence was to safeguard the people of the future and slaughter the very monsters standing in front of him. Enraged, the beast snarls and wildly swings its massive tail, desperately trying to squash the agile hero who keeps slipping through its defenses like water. Having quickly formulated a winning strategy, General proceeds to completely immobilize the creature by trapping it in dense yellow ice crystals. As he charges up a critical hit, guaranteed, to obliterate the beast into smithereens, he finally gives a proper introduction. He declares himself a monster born directly from humanity's own tragic foolishness. He is a relic who has survived through 100 million years of sleep, the designated weapon supposed to cleanse the Earth of this horrific menace. SARS isn't exactly in a position to comprehend what the abyss this guy is mumbling about, but the only thing he cares about right now is whether Jin can actually live up to his massive claims. Well, of course Jin can. After all, he is the literal culmination of countless brutal. Course Jin can. After all, he is the literal culmination of countless brutal tragic experiments, a weapon prepared beyond imagination, born from humanity's blood-stained history. He is the first, last, and only true human remaining in this world. With his introduction thoroughly complete, Jin unleashes an energy attack, so blindingly intense that it instantly incinerates the monster. The beam is so unfathomably powerful that it shoots straight through the Earth's atmosphere and pierces the vacuum of space, guaranteeing zero chance for the villain to ever regrow. With the monster definitively dead and dusted, SARS completely loses the will to speak, having just had his inflated arrogance thoroughly shoved right back in his face. Meanwhile, unseen by the group, there seems to be someone keeping a very close eye on our boy from the bushes. This mysterious woman was originally sent merely to surveil the new type of invader reported at the lake. She certainly didn't realize she'd be lucky enough to witness an entirely different kind of monster in action. As far as she's concerned, even the elite top brass of the Special Knights back in the royal capital wouldn't dare go solo against such a colossal threat. Yet this unknown young gun just made it look like an absolute piece of cake. The spy is so hyped that she literally cannot contain her excitement to relay everything she just witnessed back to her guild. Later that day, Jin finally listens to the million-year-old holographic message his friend Kagura left behind for him. His digital buddy kicks things off by acknowledging that millions of years must have passed by the time Jin actually watches this. Because of this massive time jump, Kagura desperately wonders what the future of Earth looks like and whether the planet's environment has actually healed. Right off the bat, he delivers the bad news. The evil corruptors will never truly go extinct, even if the world itself drastically recovers. And honestly, that fact is already pretty evident since Jin literally just finished fighting one. Kagura reveals that while Jin was in deep hibernation, he periodically entered cold sleep himself, just to observe the gradual changes happening across the globe. Thanks to the environmental restoration, the overall number of corruptors was steadily decreasing. Unfortunately, as the ecosystem shifted, the corruptors began to evolve right alongside it. This adaptation was a glaring sign that the world would never be able to completely rid itself of this menace. To counter this, Kagura explains, this adaptation was a glaring sign that the world would never be able to completely rid itself of this menace. To counter this, Kagura explains that he intentionally genetically edited the newly emerging life forms, giving them the potential to resist the corruptors rather than just falling prey to them. On top of that, Kagura reveals he left behind a massive of power-up specifically for our boy. Yep, that ominous syringe full of glowing green liquid is exactly what Jin needs to inject directly into his veins. Upon doing so, Jin's body immediately begins to crackle and radiate with arcane energy. The serum he just took grants him 100% compatibility with the nanomachines. Once the integration is fully complete, Jin gains the insane ability to generate physical objects through nanomachine shape transformation. The best part, this upgrade is just the tip of the iceberg. His old friend reveals that he has hidden similar power-ups scattered all across the world. He purposely didn't store them all in one place, just in case the corruptors manage to destroy a facility and wipe everything out at once. Plus, this scavenger hunt ensures Jin will have to travel across the globe and witness the magnificence of the new world firsthand. Kager admits he has no idea what kind of threat the corruptors will pose in this distant era, but he is absolutely certain that the future is far brighter than the bleak, apocalyptic reality they left behind eons ago. As the message progresses, the holographic projection shows just how much the poor scientist aged over time. It's a bittersweet moment, as Kagura expresses profound sadness, knowing he would never be able to see this beautiful, restored world for himself. After officially passing the torch and handing over the responsibilities of the future to Jin, the message finally concludes. Right on cue, Hakama and the rest of the gang arrive, actively searching for their so-called guardian, the leader. She and the koala guy, Dan Po, have come to drag him back to the village because the entire settlement is eagerly waiting for him. As they head back, Jin's sharp eyes catch a glimpse of a familiar research facility access key dangling around Hakama's neck. Curious, he inquires about the pendant, wondering exactly how she got her hands on it. Hakama explains that long ago, an incredible individual told her ancestors to pass it down through the generations as a protective charm. Legend had it that if imminent danger ever threatened the village, this very key would summon the guardian, the leader, to protect them. Hearing this, Jin is deeply moved. He's thrilled that his friend went to such incredible length to set everything up for him, leaving him feeling profoundly indebted to Kagura. Back in the center of the village, a full-blown party is already underway. While everyone is busy stuffing their faces and drinking, the kids finally parade their guardian back into the spotlight. However, the mood shifts slightly as the adult villagers immediately start gossiping upon seeing an inferior species creature. To their narrow minds, it simply doesn't make sense for a biologically ordinary being to hold the legendary title of Guardian, the Leader. Just as they are loudly doubting our boy's potential, SARS suddenly stands up and completely goes off on the group for daring to point fingers at their savior. He even goes so far as to dish out some well-deserved punches. After all, these hypocrites were the very same cowards who hightailed it out of there. The second danger reared its ugly head. And watching this wild back and forth, Hasima and Dampo can practically smell the sheer hypocrisy radiating from SARS. After all, he was literally the first person to scoff at and vehemently doubt Jin's strength just a few hours prior. After all, he was literally the first person to scoff at and vehemently doubt Jin's strength just a few hours prior. The village grandmother steps forward to address Jin personally. Feeling overwhelmingly indebted, she attempts to express her utmost gratitude on behalf of the entire settlement. The reality is, if it weren't for his timely intervention, none of them would be standing there right now. The village would have been reduced to ash. True to form, my guy nonchalantly brushes off the flattery, insisting it was just part of his job. Still, he knows these folks won't let him off the hook without giving him something in return as a gesture of goodwill. Rather than asking for material wealth, he requests something far more valuable, which is information. Jin wants a detailed rundown on the current state of the world. Unfortunately, a bunch of isolated villagers aren't exactly equipped to answer such a daunting geopolitical question. To get the answers he seeks, they strongly advise him to visit the royal capital where the king of Kermosia resides. Since people from all walks of life gather in the capital, it's a massive hub for global affairs and vital intel. They mention that merchants from their own Kadama village frequently travel there to sell specialty goods crafted from wood silkworm thread, while the road to the capital is While the road to the capital is notoriously long and treacherous, the grandma reckons Jin will be perfectly fine since he's obviously not your average Joe. She even tasks Hakama with being his official guide, suggesting Jin take her along since she was already planning to head to the royal capital anyway. Because Hakama is one of the rare few who can wield the supreme powers, she wants to enroll in the prestigious academy dedicated to training magic users. General is genuinely surprised to learn that formal educational institutions still exist in this era. Suddenly it becomes clear that our boy has earned himself a very loud, very loyal admirer. SARS enthusiastically volunteers to act as the guardian, the leader's personal bodyguard on the journey. The old woman quickly shoots him down, reminding SARS that he literally has zero reason to visit the capital. However, SARS loudly boasts that he absolutely does have a reason. He plans to join the esteemed Special Knight Order. Grandma, however, knows this is purely wishful thinking. She ruthlessly points out that SARS couldn't even manage to get accepted into the basic academy, so joining the Elite Knight Order is a massive long shot. This catches Jin off guard. Considering SARS as the supreme power wielder, Jin assumed the guy would breeze through the admission process effortlessly. Hakama enlightens him about the catch. There's a mandatory written exam designed specifically to filter out the idiots, and SARS was tragically a victim of his own sheer dumbness. Banto aside, Jin finds himself growing increasingly curious about this elite class known as the Special Knights. Speaking of which, the scene transitions away from the village to a heavily armored knight. He is visibly stunned to learn that the giant invader terrorizing the Kodama village region has already been completely annihilated. The one delivering this massive bombshell is the exact same spy chick who was watching the entire lake battle from the bushes. The knight demands she confirm the facts one more time, and the girl firmly corroborates her story without a single moment of hesitation. The Special Knight is in absolute disbelief. Until today, he never could have imagined that anyone outside of their elite order possessed the raw capability to solo a monster of that caliber. Right in the middle of their debrief, a corruptor suddenly attempts to ambush the spy, leaping at her exposed back. The knight reacts with blinding speed. Debrief, a corruptor suddenly attempts to ambush the spy, leaping at her exposed back. The knight reacts with blinding speed, drawing his sword and slicing the monster cleanly in two. Instead of retreating to the safety of the kingdom, the knight makes a bold decision. He is officially too intrigued, eager to personally track down and meet the mysterious man who effortlessly slaughtered such an enormous beast. Jin wakes up to a gorgeous morning enjoying the taste of air, still finding it hard to believe that he could enjoy a scenery like this. Part of him regrets that his dear friend Kagura can't see it alongside him. One of the kids brings him his clothes, urging the guardian, the leader, to put them on. In the next scene, we have our boy out on the village side. Hakama's grandma is telling her to fulfill her duty properly as a guide, while SARS is acting all fed up that he couldn't be the one to lead Jin as a travel guide. Jean takes special interest in the guy and even praises SARS's movement, assuring him that he'll be waiting for his arrival at the royal capital. This remark turns SARS squealing into a fangirl, wishing the guardian, the leader, the best and hoping that he takes care of Hakama. Hakama herself is told to be safe, and with that, the journey of the two begins with their departure. The midget and the tall man walk together, crossing all kinds of gorgeous and scenic views. Hakama shows him around, until finally setting camp. Jin asks about how far the capital is. Apparently it's 4 more days of walking, so it's not as far as he expected. But she's really curious about his side and why he's been on exploring the world. Refusing to share, he tells her that it's a secret, deep down. Gojo over here knows that the corruptors are still alive based on Kagura's loose description, and he even got to encounter a few in this era. Their normal rate of reproduction only occurs in destroyed and polluted environments, the exact opposite of this place, which means something or someone is causing a change behind the scenes that needs to be investigated. Hakama is scared to see him make a face so serious while lost in thought, so he apologizes to her for contemplate. Jin understands one thing. This era isn't totally dominated by the corruptor creature. Signs of survival are clear and around. His first main goal is to investigate the people of this era, then deal with the corruptors. Researching the monsters isn't so hard as he can personally do it at his leisure. Apart from that, Bro wants an immediate change and requests Hakama to stop calling him a guardian the leader. She gives him too much respect even then, and he has to urge her to just call him Jin. The sound of a horse galloping catches the attention of both. A special knight has arrived alongside his team, urging to have a moment with our duo. This guy looks like your average Prince Charming, except Jin doesn't care and asks about his identity anyway. Hailing from the Special Knight Order, the captain of the 7th Division announces himself as Argus Alton. The concept of a special knight is still new to our boy, who wonders if these are the interesting beings that the villagers mentioned. Among Argus's team, one bratty knight gets a temper tantrum and roars at the commoner for showing complete ignorance to her leader by refusing to stand up. She even tells her captain that these two must be the culprits, only for Argus to tell her to tone down. Karina is fussing in the background while the special knight addresses Jin with more respect this time. Our boy is simply curious about Karina's words earlier, but the special knight brushes it off, acting like she was just being rude. Argus then changes topics and asks about the identity of the man, where he came from or where he's. The man, where he came from or where he's headed next. Hakama shares that they belong to Kadama village with a route set to the royal capital. Karina uses this as confirmation again, acting on her high horse as she accuses the two of being the inferior species. In fact, she goes on this whole pretentious expose, acting like she's 3000 IQ for revealing inferior beings from Kadama village. Jean is actually fascinated by the advancements of this world when he hears that there are birth records. But Argus butts in again and stops Karina from making reckless assumptions. In fact, he can tell that the little girl Hakama is actually wearing special Kodama clothes, ones that are revered with high quality, even at the capital. The children of the village don't wear such royal clothes, therefore confirming that they are indeed from the village, proving Karina's dumbass wrong again, though he's certain of the girl. Argus unsheathes his blade and points it at the man standing before him, declaring him different from the rest. First, he's never even seen this guy's clothes, posing the question where he belongs to. The special knight shares that many bandits have been plaguing the road between Kadama village and the capital. It's possible that this guy is one of those bandits trying to traffic children. But this guy is one of those bandits trying to traffic children, and Hakama is also in on the act while acting harmless. The little girl tries to pitch in with a denial, but they don't believe a single word. Without thinking things through, Hakama charges up an attack, only to get cornered with several magical swords pinning her from every direction. She earns the praise of the special knight for having the supreme power, while our boy is pretty impressed by the power of a special knight. Argus's capabilities are strong, Jin can see that right away, and now that he's in a position of true authority, the special knight demands an explanation on where the man came from. That information will be the deciding factor between letting our boy live or not. But just hearing that, Jin glares at him with the look of murder. The tension is strong, but eventually, Bro decides not to pursue his feelings and simply gasps that he came from Kadama village. Karina jumps up to call him a liar to his face, but Argus genuinely accepts this explanation and puts down his weapon. This is a shocking turnaround, especially when the dude was moments away from making death threats. The special knight consents that he's not telling a lie, while Hachama officially declares Jin as the guardian, the leader of the village. The concept of a guardian the leader fascinates the special knight, but he doesn't take it seriously, and turns around to leave. He goes back up on his horse, apologizing for his rudeness. Argus was actually doing all of that as part of his job. The captain understands that they'll meet each other at the royal capital in the future. In fact, he even offers them a chance to come find him if they run up in some trouble. Saying so, he hastens to take his leave, embarrassing Karina, who wanted some serious to go down for some reason. Even Jin is looking confused with this villain's psychotic need for drama. In the next scene, we see the team en route to their next destination. Karina is forcing herself for no reason, highlighting that Jin is suspicious and that they shouldn't have let that inferior species get away. The words inferior species hang in his throat. Argus taunts the girl for not knowing which one of them is truly the inferior species. Confirming his thoughts, Ri agrees too, much to Karina's shock. In fact, she emphasizes just how much of a godlike gap between them and the man they were facing was at the time. Argus actually attempted to make a move 3 times in one instance, but his resolve couldn't even allow him that. He could sense that Jin, who had his hand in his pocket, was going to act immediately and countered him before the move was even made. Now I don't even know what the abyss that means, but good job our protagonist. By the way, Argus even tried to use the supreme power, and in the face of Jin, the power didn't even activate. Frightening Karina, the same move that he pulled against Hakama and easily cornered her, couldn't even work on him. Ri tried to do the same, only to fall short too, implying that there's a different league of a difference between their strength and a monster like Jin. A feat like that, even in Argus's view, can only be done by the supreme commander among the Night Order at best. Ri and Karina scoff. The imbecilic girl had no idea just how outclassed they were at the time. Prince Charming emphasizes that they just met a monster, an anomaly different from the rest, and it's fine if Karina made a mistake because she's new to their unit. As for the one who killed the invader of the Kadama village, Argus suspects that it's the same guy. Karina thinks that the situation is dangerous, but her captain is wise and believes it's dangerous to attack someone with zero information on the person. He also believes Jin is pretty chill for being passive, and right now their goal is to return to the royal capital, as their involvement is no longer necessary. The final thing they talk about is to inform the guild regarding the situation of the bandit. And in Argus's thoughts, he is left estranged with this guardian, the leader character of Kadama village. If only that man could become their ally, it could solve a whole number of issues their country suffers from. In the next scene, our boy is on the road again with Hakama, mentioning how they encountered someone interesting the other day. He wonders if all of the special knights are just as strong as the one they met. But Hakama clarifies that Argus was exceptional. Even among the Night Order, only the best of the best are hailed as the special knights to become their leaders. Argus is at the top of their league. She even gestures how fast his spirit art activation was the other day, a term that our boy is unfamiliar with. Apparently in the current era, borrowing the powers of the spirits is called the supreme power, and techniques used to cultivate such power is basically the spirit method or spirit arts. In other words, Kagura and Gen's nanomachines are basically being treated like spirits beyond their comfort. Prevention. He knows that they must look like some really messed up fantasy for the current age. But he can't help and remember Karina's furious feelings regarding lesser beings. Jin sparks his interest in the term and learns that the current era holds several different races of people. There are those resembling insects and fish too, and based on her grandmother's words, a certain race could even live in water or specific regions alone. That changed with the passage of time because the creatures evolved to adapt to the environment. This line is fascinating to Jin, who immediately reflects that it means some survivors of humanity must have been the cause to kickstart an evolution cycle 100 million years later. He doesn't want to overthink this grand assumption. Instead, Jin figures that the people who didn't change and adapt to the environment basically became a livestock they called the inferior species. Since they can't adapt, they're seen as bottom feeders and weak. Even though their society treats them like a bunch of nobodies, selling them as slaves, the concept of slavery existing in this era bothers our boy. But Hakama stands resolute in her own opinion. She brightly asserts that there's hardly any differences between them and the inferior beings. She doesn't understand why people treat hardly any differences between them and the inferior beings. She doesn't understand why people treat others with disregard just because someone is different from them. Every person is weird in their own way, and hearing her talk like that, Jin is impressed with the little girl's character. While they're talking, someone pops up in front of them. Looking rugged and beaten down, this kid collapses on the road, begging for their help as Hakama rushes to his side. Jin observes the kid closely, realizing that this one doesn't possess any animalistic features based off of years, which means it's some kind of human. The kid is covered from neck to toe with bruises. These injuries aren't normal for a casual incident. Hakama tries her best to lift the girl up, while Jin activates his powers to help heal the person. Instead of being grateful, the kid immediately drops the act and pulls out a blade aimed against Hakam's neck, threatening to kill her if he moves an inch from where he stands. This situation turned out far different from what our boy imagined. Now he knows for certain that he's been set up from the start. He also scans his environment to check for the ones who are nearby. A man materializes into reality out of thin air, praising Poir for the work by following his instructions. This ability is called stealth camouflage. It functions thanks to the nanomachines absorbing the visuals of the surrounding, and using that to create a cloak of invisibility. The only weakness is that the invisibility ceases to function upon movement, but these guys used it pretty well. The captain bullies Jin, calling him an inferior species and for possessing some neat clothes. He also asks the same question of where Jin came from, but our boy is stone cold and on his mewing streak, so he doesn't respond. Hakama worriedly shouts for him, while the captain threatens to kill the girl if he dares to move even a bit. Hakama acts on her own again by activating her ability, but our boy roars at her to stop at once. He doesn't want her to use such power against people, implying that it's dangerous. The little girl doesn't know what to do. While Captain Bandit over here is having the time of his life realizing that the girl has the supreme power too. They ask Jin if he can also wield such strength, but bro is in the mood to around, so he acts like a mystery to be found out. Pissed off, the meathead kicks him down, reminding the inferior species to stay in his lane. The captain takes issue with his subordinate trying to damage their goods. Then again, they don't have high. And again, they don't have high hopes of them selling at a good price. They don't even entertain the idea of Jin possessing the supreme power, since he looks like an inferior being at best. While at the same time, Hakama is starting to realize that these are the bandits and slave traders that Argus warned them about. The bandit leader activates a spell of his own to take care of the girl first, while Hakama is fearing for her life that they'll be taken and sold as slaves at this rate. In the next scene, hilariously, Jin wakes her up from her beauty sleep. Bro's got no shirt on because these fools literally stole all his drip, only sparing his undies. Hakama seems to be alright, but she's genuinely curious where they're even at. It looks like some kind of containment facility where the other slaves are kept. Jin explains that it's the hideout of the bandits, even pointing to the ones that were captured before them. All of these guys look like they're in rough shape, most are inferior species. It's a grim scene. But hilariously, Hakama is more curious why this dude's got his tits out in the open like that. Jin explains they took everything away from him for looking strange, but she's just amazed how confident this man is without his clothes. Apparently this look is what suits Jin most in comfort. But aside from that, she's the most curious why he didn't fight back then and there. With his godlike power, he could have wiped them in a single go, before he could answer. The par is sent inside the room for some breakfast. After finding them awake, she offers them a meal. Hakama is pissed off, but Par doesn't really care whether they hate her or not, as she never had any expectations of being forgiven. The pure girl is annoyed, but Jin stuns blue hair by actually calling her kind. It comes as a shock to the pretend victim, but in reality, Jin shares that bad people don't even care about the concept of whether someone hates them in the first place, or if they deserve forgiveness. The fact that Par thinks of these things is enough to conclude she's kind. Regardless, the underwear man over here is done playing yoga and gets to the real business. He grabs hold of the bars in an Unkaliro fashion, literally freaking bends them apart to carve him a way out. Par is left flabbergasted by what she just saw. In reality, Jen has actually been waiting for her all this time for a private conversation. The blue hair is confused as to why, but Jin can already sense that she's blackmailed into working because someone she cares about is imprisoned here somewhere. Par is terrified that how this guy's guess is so accurate. He even goes on to heal her wounds, emphasizing that the only reason he was fooled is because he knew the girl's wounds were actually real. Criminals don't really go around roughening up their own allies to near-death condition. That's how he knew immediately that Poir was being blackmailed and forced into work. Jin's words cause her to experience massive guilt, ultimately allowing her a chance to share that her little brother has been captured by these 6 gumbags. They constantly threaten that they'll sell the boy outside the country if she resists, that they'll never let her see him again. Poir breaks down into tears, collapsing that even her parents were slaughtered by these bastards, so her brother's all that's left. Just hearing her side of the story gets this man going unlike anything else. Jin is in a literal fit of rage, and Hakama finally understands why he let himself be captured like that. His goal has always been to save these people, but he also knows that villains are stubborn and annoying. Even letting a single one escape leads to disaster later, because they can rebuild their power and create trouble again. Long story short, Bro wants to squash these cockroaches together. And he starts off by kicking the out of this furry with a backshot. With the path now open, Gojo Satoru intends to rip these lowlives to pieces. Jin knows the psyche of villains more than anyone, and we get an understanding of this when we circle back to 100 million years into the past, when human civilization had reached its technological prime. The kid at the time was beaten down and had nothing. His first thoughts were to admire justice in the world, but that admiration came with a second, more haunting realization. Any world that needed justice was also filled with an overwhelming amount of bad people. People who wanted to hunt him down, for example. Living an ordinary life is something to be praised, but the kind of environment he grew up in, the boy never experienced the peace he ever wanted. So when it came to the people who tried to mess with him, Jin literally crushed them under the weight of his powers, breaking their bones and destroying them over the years. He took down bad people everywhere he went, continuously crushing the ones that disrupted the peace of the world. Until one day a man came to him, suggesting a different opinion. He thought that Jin had been born into the wrong world, and that leads us. back to the present. Our boy is walking like a Chad to confront the losers in front of him. Having already laid waste to piles of bodies, Bro just wants to increase his kill count and refusing to answer any questions. He throws one of their own at the henchman in front. The moment one of them catches the guy, our boy swoops in with a lightning-fast kick and slaughters the other. His friend is left horrified because Jin just sends this dude with a crater in the wall, appearing no different than the leader monster who doesn't know how to stop. Terrified, the guy tries to run away, but it's pointless. Only his agonizing screams reach the lower-level captives. Poor consent that this screen is coming from the others. She's genuinely starting to wonder who the Abyss Jin is. Hakama casually reveals that this dude is a walking the leader, and that they have nothing to worry about as he'll take care of everything by himself. Right now, they need to follow his instructions to head outside, but it's terrifying to that they're about to be saved. The leader of the bandits isn't exactly easy to beat, even though he possesses a talent for powerful the supreme magic. In a battle of brute strength, it's hard to imagine. Imagine anyone taking that guy down, but while Poir is thinking such useless thoughts, our boy already has the dude quivering on his knees. The boss begs Jin to stop, offering him lumps of money, even adding slaves into the picture. By the way, Poir's brother is kept in this room. Jin is disgusted by the mere suggestion of being offered slaves. He kills another guy in front of the boss, while the bandit leader questions what the abyss is going on. Not even his spirit arts can seem to activate in the face of this man's the supreme powers. But even more than that is the mystery of why Jin gained all this power. Hilariously, our boy calls this clown a half-baked villain, because the real ones at least have the spirit to run away when they know they're outclassed. But the bandit leader alongside his henchmen are all condescending assholes who look down on others, deluding themselves that maybe they could win. But the moment they fear losses in sight, they begin to plead. Honestly, this verbal beatdown is satisfying. And, following our boy's advice, the bandit leader moves his feet to start running. He goes straight to the elevator to pull the lever, unleashing a secret weapon they've engaged as a monster. Jin is shocked to find a corrupted under their control. It's a powerful beast acquired for a certain noble. What bothers me is how the abyss purple Arnold Schwarzenegger over here couldn't break out of his cage sooner. Bandit leader is more than happy to give Jin a challenge, vowing to reduce everything to chaos as the creature roars its battle cry. The first attack is made by the corrupted monster, who swings to pummel down Jin on his feet. The attack is blocked, giving us a view of that massive gat in the process. The bandit leader is left speechless by the power of Jin's the power of his muscles. Meanwhile, Jin shares that he was literally born with a superhuman body, possessing muscle fibers, several orders of magnitude higher than the average person. Now that it's his turn to strike, this man kicks the creature back. Before vowing to unleash more of his strength, Bro shoots a Kamehameha wave like he's Goku or something, wiping out the monster to pieces in a single blast. All that yapping and the bandit leader is back to where he started. On his knees again, stares him down, wondering what this pathetic scumbag will do next. Now that he's run out of options, Bro tries to weasel his way out, begging to be spared. But my glorious white-haired king responds with a hook to his face, refusing any chance of mercy. With the matter settled, he takes back his aura farming drip and apologizes to the kids in advance for waiting. First, Bro wants to check the documents to gather direct evidence of their crimes. He opens a drawer and finds an interesting set of notes. Just one glance at them probably makes you think that this dude has hit the jackpot. But no, our boy has absolutely no idea what the abyss he's reading right now. The language is unfamiliar to him, so he is too intense to use Hasima for help. Even then, Jin just can't place a finger on why these bandits were using the corrupted. To confirm his suspicions, he inspects the torn remains of the monster he defeated. This way, he can access the cameras of the surrounding nanomachines floating in the room. Jin wants to check the records of last week at the least, and stumbles across a footage of his liking. Apparently this one noble came to them with the monster, and refused to elaborate his intentions with the creature. Instead, he left them a little nugget. This conniving villain hinted at the demise of the country soon. June takes note of this detail for later, while the scene cuts to the children that escape the containment. Poir. To the children that escape the containment, Poir ends up reuniting with her little brother. The two embrace each other in a long hug, feeling safe that neither of them got hurt badly. She turns and addresses Jin as the leader, thanking him for all his efforts, while Bro refuses to accept the name. Aside from that, he's curious about the people in red uniforms currently seizing the bandits. Apparently they're supposed to be guild staff members. In fact, the person with the majestic hair and beard standing close to them is the guild master of their city. The same man is drawn to Jin and comes up to ask if he's connected to the incident. Our boy confirms his contribution, pluring Padrak to introduce himself formally as the guildmaster and thank him for his efforts. He takes one look at the guy, stunned as to how someone could defeat such a large number of people without even taking a single hit. Despite wielding the appearance of an inferior species, Padrak can tell this guy is no laughing matter. The Guildmaster shares that the incident resulted in heaps of damage. Bandit extermination requests are at an all-time high. This makes Jin curious, because he thinks the ruler would do his best to prioritize the capture of the bandits. The Guildmaster laughs, arguing that not even the ruler has that level of authority. Dealing with the crimes is considered the duty of the guild members, the ones who swear their loyalty to the king. Even if the ruler Shapian, the ruler of the land, were to commit crimes, they would have to report the situation to the king. Even if something like that seems unlikely, Padrak is confident in his assumption. While Jin is comparing the situation from 100 million years back, realizing that the ruler represents a mayor, and the guild is acting like the police. Even then, the ruler Shapian is not someone who can be trusted easily. Jin decides to surrender all the documents that he recovered from the bandits, questioning if they can be of any use to the guild. The guildmaster reads one of them, only to realize that it's a proper list of the ones who traded with the bandits. Thanks to this list, they can easily arrest the whole group. Curious, Jin asks if the city the ruler's name is also on the list. But impressively enough, the ruler Shapion's name is nowhere to be found, making him a clever villain who hides his tracks. For now, Jin can't do much about the situation. He's helped free the slaves, so he wants to know what will become of them now. The guildmaster assures them that the guild will take responsibility for return. What will become of them now? The guildmaster assures them that the guild will take responsibility for returning them home safely if a missing report has been filed. But for the ones who don't have such a thing, unfortunately, they don't have anywhere to go. The system is because it refuses to account for cases like Poir and Nino who lost their parents, so Jin asks for a shelter to keep them in. Shockingly, this era doesn't even have a shelter in town. Padrat can only find work for these kids, but because they're both classified inferior, doing that will be difficult too. The kids are sulking, while Jin is disappointed that it's all the same in this world. He doesn't want to leave these kids alone, even if there's nowhere to work. Suddenly, an idea pops up in his head, so he asks them if these two would be willing to work somewhere if they had the chance. Poir agrees and wants to give it a shot, which reminds Jin of the Golden Knight Argus, who once offered to help them if needed. In the next scene, we're at the royal capital Kermosha to visit Argus. The special knight is on his way back when suddenly he experiences a sudden chill out of nowhere. Arriving at his residence, he tells the team to rest up for the day. Argus returns to his quarters. He's welcomed by an entourage of maids and butlers welcoming him with pride and glory. The first thing he does is ask for an update, and from the reactions of his servants, the special knight can gather that something must have happened. The butler apologizes for troubling his master only when he's just returned. While this is going on, his sister watches the scene from above with a glaring look. Argus receives the report and gets an immediate headache. The situation is way worse than he thought it would be, as an invader seemed to pop inside the capital and wreak havoc. The question of how it got in is less important to him, but rather who helped navigate the beast inside is the real problem. His best guess is that it's someone from Harneska Academy, a place teeming with suspicious people plotting their demise. Regardless, he's in dire need of comrades to control the situation of the capital. And at this time, Jin and his group resume their journey for the capital. 3 days flew by into the extermination mission. Poor began to wonder if there's truly a job for inferior beings like them to take up in the capital. Being the kind man he is, Jin assures them that their ability to read and write is already a huge edge, so he urges the kid to have more confidence. Hakama on the other hand points in the distance, sharing that the capital is near. Our boy is absolutely gobsmacked when he stares at the grand beauty of the royal capital. By the evening they arrive inside the capital. The place is hustling with people all around. Hakama reveals that the capital relies on imports, which means every kind of good is available here. Even the Kadama clothing that they once mentioned about. Jin finds it interesting and takes notice of a bunch of insect mutants too. There's an abundance of races around here, showcasing how they all develop differently. Streets are tidy, safety is top-notch in the capital too. But even with all those benefits, there are some disgusting parts. It reflects that each era shares its own bundle of problems. He asked Hakama about the entrance exam of the academy and learns that it's going to be held next week. They're going to be waiting until the exam starts, but overhearing their conversation, Blonde girl wonders if this party is interested in entering Harness Academy, especially when they all look like inferior species. We arrive at the hotel rooms where Hakama and Nino pounce on top of the comfy beds. They can finally sleep at a proper place with Jin's initial goal of reaching the capital being fulfilled. This makes him wonder what he should do next, as even though this is a new era, he still has to find a way to make money to survive. By the way, bro got a lump of money for the extermination of the bandits, but he knows it won't last him forever, especially not with the 4 of them. Then there's the added issue of finding these kids jobs to work at, and an immediate solution to this would be a meeting with Argus. However, right now they don't know anything about the guy's location or what connections that could lead them to him. It inspectulates a bunch of options, prioritizing the investigation of corruptors first. He knows that there are people in this era trying to exploit such monsters for their own goals. Corruptors are by nature very dangerous beings, so they can't be left unattended. This time, he refuses to let the living face total annihilation again. Anyway, he casually asks Hakama what the people of this country do when they have to research something. Apparently they read books on the subject or consult someone knowledgeable. The books themselves are pretty expensive. Even in the village, they had to read the books together just to afford them. At the same time, the royal capital boasts a spectacular library, allowing research to be much easier. Jin likes that idea, because now he can use that library to his advantage and find clues about the laboratory that Kagura left behind. In the next scene, bro's at the receptionist's desk, but the girl openly rejects him from using the facility. Since books are considered special national property, they don't allow just anyone free entry. Only the students of a recognized academy or nobles are allowed to use such a place, once more complicating the situation for our boy. Hakama hilariously reminds Jin that bro can't even read in his current state. Though he's trying his best to learn letters, It'll take him a while to get a full grasp of the language. Bro scratching his head like he's got an exam to prepare for. While two dudes in a cloak are secretly spying on them as part of their mission. They come up to confront Jin for a simple chat, but actually it's a conversation that starts with a violent punch. Our boy reflexively grabs his fist right away, before taunting the guy for having amazing manners in his introduction. So much for the city's safety when people are attacking like this, but the guy remains arrogant and Jin wards off his fist up in the air. His fist up in the air diverting a powerful magic blast. The fighter praises him for having sharp instincts. While Poir can't fathom how these guys are openly using the supreme power in the middle of a civilian zone, our boy wants to know what's the deal with these losers, and quickly realizes that someone put a hit on his head. That only works out in his favor though, even though these bullies threaten Jin's group to get lost from the capital, unless they want to deal with danger. Jin doesn't really budge on his position, inviting the guy to try and attack him again, only to get his fist caught and literally slammed into the hard ground. After delivering a reality check to one of them, he turns to the other who is firing a magic blast right at him. Jin refuses to dodge and blocks the fiery attack head-on, making this guy think he dealt some serious damage. But out of the smoke emerges a hand, as he quickly grabs the guy and lifts him up as if he weighs nothing. Adopting a serious tone, Jin mocks them for being pathetically weak while challenging him. That is if they even have the will to try. Bro really is the Gojo Satoru of this story. Meanwhile, his victim is questioning how on earth a low-level species is capable of so much strength. Suddenly, a knight's order stops the fight. It's Karina who is annoyed that she has to interrupt her day off for this trouble. The girl doesn't even care about the assailants who attacked Jin. She just wants to throw both Hakama and our boy in jail for the last time. Much to Jin's favor, causing a scene that attracted the attention of someone connected to Argus, even if she's currently screaming in his face. After busting a street fight, Karina spots Jin and immediately gets excited because she believes she has finally caught the inferior species Jin causing trouble in the city again. She is just about to start lecturing him, but a demi-human spectator standing nearby approaches her and admits that she saw everything that happened. The spectator explains that Jin was actually the one who got attacked first, and that he was only defending himself during the fight. When Karina checks the faces of the attackers, she quickly realizes that they are her usual foolish troublemaker juniors from the Harness Academy. She quietly hopes that the special captain's younger sister is not involved in this mess again. Jin asks Karina if she is currently on patrol and questions her about it, pointing out that he thought guild members usually handled duties like this around the city. Karina replies that she was simply taking care of her nightly responsibility of maintaining order. While she was on her way to visit a cafe nearby, now that she has personally seen Jin defeat several strong students from the academy with ease. Karina begins to feel that her captain's earlier suspicions about this so-called inferior human might actually be correct. She then tries to excuse herself and asks Jin to avoid getting into trouble again. But Jin does not let her leave so easily, and instead uses the opportunity to ask her to escort him so he can meet her Captain Argus. Once the ancient human finally gets an audience with Captain Argus of the 7th Division, he goes straight to the point and asks the man to hire them, reminding Argus that he was the one who had previously offered his help. When Argus asks about the kids who came along with him, Jin explains that he ended up confronting the bandits Argus had been searching for, and managed to capture them before handing them over to the guild. Argus becomes anxious because he finds it hard to believe that someone who looks like an inferior species could accomplish all of that so quickly. Jin then continues explaining that he brought along Nino and his big sister Poir because they had no one else to rely on, and people would treat them poorly due to being considered inferior species. Because of that, Jin asked the captain if he could arrange some kind of work for them. Captain Argus reminds the ancient human that he has no obligation toward them. But Jin argues that he is willing to take responsibility for the kids since he is the one who saved them. Argus finds this reasoning interesting while the children look at their savior with hopeful expressions. The captain then quickly forms an idea and decides to use the kids as a bargaining piece. He calmly tells Jin that he will allow the kids to stay at his place and work there only if Jin agrees to work as a teacher at the academy. Jin accepts the condition without giving it much thought, and soon the kids are changed into maid outfits. Poir thanks the captain sincerely, while the captain instructs his other maid servants to properly educate them and make sure that no discrimination happens. As Jin walks away with Argus, he asks the captain what kind of catch is involved in him working as an instructor. Argus explains that although he has no clear idea where Jin originally came from, his instincts tell him that Jin is a trustworthy person. The captain then moves directly to the real point and tells Jin that he wants him to infiltrate the Harness Academy. Jin becomes serious and asks for a proper explanation. He wants him to infiltrate the Harneska Academy. Jin becomes serious and asks for a proper explanation, and Argus begins describing the current power struggle inside the capital. According to him, several factions are locked in a quiet cold war over control of the throne, since the king is critically ill and might kick the bucket at any second now. He further explains that aside from the usual succession conflict, there are also individuals who hold no legitimate right to the throne, but still want to seize power. Apparently these people are extremely dangerous and are even using the corruptors, which people in this era call invaders, as weapons to push their plans forward. Jin remembers the ruler Shapian and begins to realize that there might be even more troublesome figures than him. The captain says that he wants to expose these people and locate their hidden base, and the place he currently suspects the most is the Harnessed Academy. Argus then knocks on the door and introduces Jin to his younger sister Miria, you call Serbia Alton. He explains that she attends the academy and will guide him there. Miria immediately shows her sharp tongue as she calls Jen a lowly inferior species, just like Karina did earlier. The captain quickly tries to stop her and reminds her that speaking like that is rude. However, she keeps insisting that she does not approve of giving such an important task to someone she considers an inferior species. Jin points out her rude attitude, which makes the captain embarrassed, and he apologizes for her behavior. Karina steps closer to Jin and quietly whispers that Miria is actually very capable, but she strongly dislikes inferior species. Miria keeps throwing insults at Jin, and claims that she does not see him as someone qualified to take the role of an instructor. Hakama then makes the situation worse by casually revealing that her guardian cannot even read. However, Hakama quickly continues by praising how strong and capable Jin really is. Her words suddenly make Karina realize that Miria was the one who earlier asked the academy students to attack Argus. The captain repeatedly apologizes again and promises that he will properly discipline his sister. Jin changes the subject and asks Argus what exactly he is expected to teach at the academy. Argus replies that from his observations, Jin seems quite skilled with spirit arts, which is why he believes Jin would be the perfect person to teach the basic fundamentals. He then lists the 4 basic spirit arts as ignition, discharge, freezing, and healing, and explains that being able to use even 2 of them should already be considered enough. Hearing that the basics here consist of only 4 spirit arts, General realizes that the bandit leader from earlier was actually quite skilled. The ability he used would already count as a special spirit art in this place. Jim quietly smiles as he decides that he might change the way people in this era understand these special powers. The story then shifts to a week later, when it is finally time for Hakama to take her entrance exam at the academy. Argus walks in together with Jin, since he wants him to take responsibility for the instructor duties this year. It appears that every year 1 division from the Night Order must fill this position, and this time it is the turn of the 7th Division. While Jin quietly walks behind them, the fat man named Rudman keeps staring at him the entire time. They eventually arrive at the headmaster's office. Argus respectfully greets her. The headmaster smiles when she sees her former pupil doing so well in the Night Order. Here, she then brings up the ongoing faction struggles inside the country, and suddenly begins criticizing Jin, arguing to the captain that he should not treat the academy so lightly, that he would send an inferior species to handle such an important role. The captain firmly insists that Jin is more capable than anyone else in his division. When the skinny rat the ruler Jita notices that the headmaster seems ready to accept Jen as their instructor, he quickly objects to the idea. He now takes over the role of insulting the poor ancient human, and strongly argues that they cannot allow an inferior human to take such a position. The headmaster then turns toward the ruler Rudman and asks for his opinion regarding this protest. The fat man casually agrees with the concern, but then presents a practical argument about the backlash they might face from both the students and the other instructors. The headmaster then joins the protest as well and admits that she shares the same concern. Jin realizes he is being spoken about without being included, so he steps forward and stands up for himself before respectfully greeting them. He calmly introduces himself with proper manners, showing that he can remain composed even while being openly mocked. He then asks the rulers a direct question, wondering whether they are judging him because he looks like an inferior species, or because they believe he lacks the power needed for the role. The principal smiles and replies that the only thing that concerns them is whether he truly has the required ability. Then she asks him if he can prove it to them. When Argus suggests that the headmaster tested herself, she agrees, and a quick mock battle is arranged at the Harneska Academy Spirit Arts Training Ground. The sly skinny rat is the one who steps forward to face Jin, laughing as he says that at least Jin will not embarrass himself too badly since there are only a few students around today. The headmaster then explains the rules and makes it clear that they can only fight using spirit arts, because that is exactly what she expects their new tutor to teach at the academy. Some of the students gather to watch the match, including Maria, who stands among the spectators. She is excited because this is the first time she will see the skinny rat personally engage in a battle. Jin already understands how this will end, yet he lets out a quiet sigh and allows the institute to witness his power for themselves. Argus, however, begins to feel uncertain. This is the first time he will actually see the person he recommended fighting in front of others, and he worries that Jin might end up embarrassing him in front of everyone. The ruler Gita, on the other hand, looks extremely Embarrassing him in front of everyone. The ruler Gaida, on the other hand, looks extremely excited and seems eager to end the match quickly while putting Jin in his place. It typically declares that he will take the opening move and immediately launches a huge fireball that he believes will be enough to defeat Jin in a single strike. Jin calmly dodges the attack with ease while the skinny rat still remains confident that he will win this contest and prove the captain wrong about his judgment, and follows up with his ace attack called lightning spears, while Jin continues dodging every strike and slowly getting on his nerves. While the skinny rat believes that all Jin can do is keep running away, Jin himself quietly sighs and thinks that this kind of power was never meant to be used against people. However, since there is no other choice left, Jin finally decides to demonstrate his ability, and intentionally reveals a unique spirit art. He uses a gravity manipulation attack and forces the skinny rat, the ruler Gita, down onto the ground, pinning him there and making it clear that he never stood a chance, and that his arrogance meant nothing in the end. The headmaster and the ruler Rodman, the fat man, are both left shocked by what they witness. Even Argus and his sister Miria stand there with their mouths open after seeing such a clean display of power that they have never witnessed before. When they ask what exactly just happened, Jin calmly explains that he simply manipulated the gravity surrounding the ruler Gita. When he hears people saying that they have never seen anything like this before, Jin smiles quietly as he realizes just how much there is for the students, as well as the instructors of the academy, to learn. The ruler Gita grinds his teeth in frustration as he lies flat on the ground, looking absolutely miserable, out of sheer pity for the wrinkly old man. Our hero finally releases the gravity pressure pinning him down, has a meltdown, shouting that a spirit technique like that should not even exist. He insists the inferior must be using some kind of illegal trick. Our boy quietly stands there and takes the verbal abuse like a champ while the geyser screeches in his face like a Karen. Watching the exchange, the headmaster calmly makes her decision. The surrounding students are impressed as well. Miria in particular cannot understand how he controls that much the supreme power. Normally, Infurious barely possessed any at all. Her curiosity spikes, and she is determined to uncover who Jin really is. The scene shifts to the welcome ceremony 1 week later. There, the headmaster announces that Harneska Academy was founded to train warriors capable of eliminating invading threats. Anyone too weak to keep up has no place within its walls. However, those who succeed are practically guaranteed a future filled with status and influence. Observing from above, a few demi-humans standing near Miria are surprised by how many newcomers have gathered. Quite a few of them do not even come from noble families. A lion demi-human named Riaz greets Miria casually. He mentions that it is unexpected to see her attending the welcome ceremony in person. While chatting, he suddenly notices an inferior sitting beside the faculty and nearly chokes. He completely loses his composure when Miria reveals that the inferior is actually their new teacher. She asks Riaz for his honest first impression based purely on appearance. When he bluntly describes the guy as an average nobody with no wife and no life, she admits that was her initial judgment too. Feeling multiple stares drilling into him, Jin quickly realizes he cannot start investigating the academy too openly from day one. Before anything else, he needs to rebrand his image from a duoch. Else, he needs to rebrand his image from a worthless inferior into something more neutral and unthreatening. Right now, it feels like he has a giant target painted on his back. After the ceremony concludes, it is finally time for his first class. Meanwhile, the ruler Gita gathers the senior students and announces that regular classes are officially back in session. He bluntly warns them not to fall behind the promising new talents who joined this year. That said, he angrily demands to know why most of the class is absent. The old man smiles on the inside, fully aware that many of them would rather die than sit through a lesson taught by an inferior. The greasy rat even went out of his way to spread the word that today's lecture would be handled by Jin. Surprisingly, our professor does not seem bothered in the slightest. He confidently stands at the podium and introduces himself as the new spirit techniques instructor. Without missing a beat, Riaz shamelessly asks whether he truly has what it takes to teach the most elite class in the academy. Our boy responds with a calm smile, saying they will find out soon enough. He even tells the lion demi-human that he is free to leave if the class proves beneath him. With that established, he lays down one rule immediately. He tells his students they must never use the supreme power against humans under any circumstance. To clarify his reasoning, he explains that the supreme power was designed to suppress the regeneration abilities of inhibitors. However, humans recover normally after being hurt, revealing that its true purpose was always to eliminate invaders. Hearing that, some loudmouth at the back starts trash-talking, calling him soft because he supposedly lacks the supreme power. The brat insists he has every right to use his strength, however the abyss he pleases. Slightly annoyed, Professor Jin invites him to test whether he is truly as weak as claimed. Right there in the middle of class, he tells the student to hit him with his strongest move. The kid grins arrogantly, declaring he will never attend class again if the professor so much as scratches him. Seizing the opportunity, he conjures a lightning spear crackling with energy. Even the ruler Gita tenses up, worried the classroom might not survive such a reckless attack. Without hesitation, the student launches the spear straight at Jin, kicking up a massive cloud of dust across the room. Everyone assumed the inferior got destroyed, but then, But then, a blade shoots out from the haze and jams into the wall behind him, barely missing his ugly mug. Jin calmly states that the sword could have pierced him completely if he truly intended to end him. With that, he delivers his first lesson of the semester: never judge someone purely by appearance. Ruse watches in silence, wondering if that technique even qualified as a spirit art. Professor Jin continues smoothly, explaining that inferior are labeled that way because they are considered weak. Then, as someone clearly leagues above them, he asks what that would make him. His aura surges to its peak as he answers his own question. That, he declares, is what you call a teacher. Next, he delivers a second lesson. He asks the same kid if he knows the criteria required to activate spirit arts. Acting like it is common knowledge, the student answers that it all comes down to vivid imagination. If you picture something clearly enough, the spirits will carry it out. Professor Jin agrees that imagination matters, but adds that there is one critical element they are all missing. He explains that spirits respond to different wavelengths, and they are what really trigger their actions. There are 8 primary wavelengths in total. Among them, ignition, discharge, healing, and freezing are the foremost people know. However, gravity control, light control, atmosphere control, and spatial manipulation also exist. The ruler Gita nearly choked seeing him use all 8 of them so casually. With that revelation, our boy formally begins his first real lecture. Later that evening, he contemplates where to start his investigation into the academy's secrets. The campus is crowded with students at every corner. After the display in class, he is the main topic of discussion. If he wants answers, he needs access to somewhere students are not allowed to enter. On his way, he crosses paths with Miria. Without hesitation, she bluntly asks him to admit who he truly is. He responds by asking how he could be anything other than the so-called inferior everyone labels him as. She concedes that would make sense. If not for his ability to command all 8 spirit arts effortlessly, not even most demi-humans are capable of that. Our boy shrugs and tells her it is not that complicated, comparing it to switching tabs between different wavelengths. Of course, he knows it's more complex in practice than it sounds. Requests they continue this conversation. They continue this conversation somewhere private. Once alone, she repeats her question about who he is. This time, he claims he is simply a human who was placed in cold sleep beneath Kadama village for a few million years. To humor him, she asks what he supposedly did before hibernation. Jin answers honestly that he served as a special forces agent for his country. Even though millennia have passed, he remembers those days vividly, as if they happened only a few years ago. Curious, she presses further, asking why someone who fought for his nation would be sealed away in cold sleep. He feels sad, admitting he failed his mission. He truly believed that if he pushed himself far enough, he could save everyone. But he failed in the end, and he lost everything. He also confesses that becoming a professor was not random. He needs the influence of the Alton family. Moving on, he asks her where they are headed. She soon leads him to a dusty rundown room, explaining it used to be a storage space where instructors kept their teaching supplies. On one of the shelves, an owl statue immediately catches his attention. He asks what her real reason was for bringing him here, so Miria admits she has been investigating the strange empty space. Space located right next to this storage room. It is far too large to simply be unused, which makes her certain it is hiding something important. Without wasting a second, Professor Jin casually reaches out and grabs the owl statue. She sidesteps him in confusion, wondering why he is petting a dusty old decoration. The moment he twists it slightly, the bookshelf slides apart, revealing a hidden passage leading deeper inside. He calmly congratulates her on being correct about the existence of a secret room. Miria is left speechless, unable to understand how he solved the mechanism so quickly. Our Professor Cool explains that he noticed the owl was the only clean object in a room buried under thick layers of dust. After that, he tells her to remain behind while he goes in to investigate the suspicious chamber alone. Surprised, Miria firmly states she will be accompanying him. He reminds her there could be a dangerous invader inside, and he might not be able to protect her. The blonde makes it clear her skills are not to be underestimated. She confidently claims she stands leagues above everyone else in her class, with only her brother possibly surpassing her skill. Hearing that, he decides to take her at her word. The two of them carefully descend the decrepit staircase. Which stretches far deeper than either of them expected. Miria quietly appreciates how convenient it is to command light so effortlessly in total darkness. Jin casually jokes out loud that the place feels like the perfect dungeon for monsters to spawn in a fantasy game, leaving the girl confused by his gamer reference. Curious again, she brings up his backstory once more. She asks if he already has a suspect in mind. Since hunting down threats was supposedly his specialty, he cannot help but feel amused at how quickly she accepted his unbelievable story. As a small reward for her trust, he reveals that he has a strong suspicion the ruler Rudman might be involved somehow. She immediately asks why he is so certain. Professor Jin explains that while the man appears charismatic during lectures, there is something deeply unsettling about him when he is alone. In those quiet moments, the greasy villain gives off the vibe of someone definitely plotting something shady. He explains that this kind of behavior is common among people who are completely different from the persona they present to the world. On top of that, he found it pretty obvious that the man is terribly observant for a teacher. Miria admits she originally suspected the ruler Gita instead, but Jin dismisses her theory, pointing out that someone with zero control over his emotions could never orchestrate anything truly sinister. To her surprise, he even goes as far as to say that the wrinkly old nutcase is probably decent at heart. At last, the two reach the bottom of the staircase, which opens into a massive dust-filled hall. Miria's eyes widen in shock at the enormous labyrinth hidden directly beneath the academy grounds. Suddenly, Jin stops walking because he is just stunned. Not even in his wildest imagination did he expect to find Kagura's laboratory hidden in a place like this. When Jin looks at the doors protected by nanomachines, which people of this era would simply call spirits, he becomes certain that this must truly be Kagura's laboratory. Miria grows nervous because even though she had been searching for a long time, she never managed to discover this massive door that had been hidden beneath the academy the entire time. Jin explains to her that ordinary people would need a special access key to open such a door. He remembers how Hakama inherited the key back in Kodama village, and he believes that someone in this place must have inherited a similar key in the same way. However, Jin already knows that he himself automatically holds full access, so he calmly raises his hand forward. The lock system immediately recognizes him as the individual with the highest level of authority, and quickly unlocks the door for him, as the large gate slowly opens. Jin wonders if the one trying to overthrow the rulers of this country might also be someone who had access to this place. Meanwhile, Miria still stands there stunned, unable to process that something like this existed right beneath their academy all along. She then asks Jin if he truly did not need a key, and Jin casually remarks that ancient humans are special in that regard. Miria finally begins to believe that Jin's words might be true, and quietly follows him deeper underground into the hidden lab. Inside they discover several corruptors locked inside large metal cages, and strangely, all of them remain completely calm without showing any sign of going wild. Jin remembers the corruptors that the bandits had locked up earlier, and recalls how they also stayed unusually quiet until the moment they were finally released. However, the thing that troubles him the most is the question of how anyone could transport such massive corruptors all the way into a place like this without being noticed. Miria admits that her brother's suspicion about this academy might have been correct after all. She suggests that they quietly stay hidden there and wait so they can ambush whoever is responsible for this, since the culprits will surely return to this place sooner or later. Jin, however, tells her that instead of standing around and waiting, they should quickly seal the academy and deal with these corruptors first. Miria argues that they cannot allow the mastermind behind this plan to escape. The Jin explains that protecting the students must come first, because if these corruptors start rampaging, it will put every life in the academy at risk. When he mentions that her brother would probably make the same decision, the girl finally agrees with his approach. Jin then adds that he has a bad feeling about all of this, and whenever he gets that feeling, his instincts usually turn out to be correct. He says that he will investigate the laboratory a little further himself, and asks her to go back up and bring her brother so the academy can be placed under curfew, and the students can be protected. After sending her back to the surface, Jin moves deeper into the underground. Jin moves deeper into the underground facility, hoping to discover some useful clues. Meanwhile, on the surface, the skinny rat is being mocked for losing to the new tutor. Even so, he still calls Jin an inferior species and blames him for ruining his reputation. The headmaster then walks over to the ruler Gita and tells the skinny rat to stop making strange movements because the students are starting to feel uncomfortable. She gets publicly humiliated by the headmaster before being asked about the ruler Rudman, who has been missing since that morning. The headmaster feels overwhelmed, but the fat man's absence only makes her more worried. Just then, she notices a dark cloud forming above the academy and wonders what has just happened. Meanwhile, Miria rushes toward the surface, but as she exits the door, she comes face to face with the ruler Rudman, the fat man who had been missing since the morning, now wearing a purely evil expression that clearly shows he is up to no good. Back in the lab, Jin examines some strange reddish portals that appear to pulse as if they are alive. He wonders whether this thing is actually alive. Kagura is the one who created it. Jin then finds the message cube Kagura left behind along with the nanomachine injector. The ancient human hopes the cube will contain clues to help him understand and resolve the current situation. He quickly activates the cube and a hologram of Kagura appears, casually holding a coffee. Higura had already expected Jin to reach this facility before anyone else since this lab is the closest to where he would awaken. The doc explains that in this lab he was developing a device that humans had never accomplished even hundreds of millions of years ago, and that a small portion of the device's power has been sealed within the injector for Gen to us. He praises himself for this achievement before finally revealing that the mind-blowing device he is referring to is actually a teleportation device. Never in his wildest imagination did he think Kagura was capable of building something on this scale, but now everything starts clicking into place. Argus mentioned that invaders appeared across the city out of nowhere, Alarm bells start ringing in his head, because whoever owns this device is likely behind everything, especially with an entire zoo's worth of monsters locked up down here. Then he notices something off about the mad scientist's recorded message. The original teleportation device was a pure blue color. If that is true, then what the abyss is this red div? If that is true, then what the abyss is this red device standing in front of him now? Just as the nearby clock strikes 12, the device activates with a violent hum. He steadies himself, bracing for whatever nightmare is about to crawl out of it. Instead, every invader inside the cages instantly vanishes into thin air. Up on the surface, Argus and the Special Knights witness their worst nightmare unfolding in real time. Hundreds of invaders rain down from the sky onto the royal capital, looking like they just dropped into a battle royale match. Back underground, the greasy fat man turns toward Miria with the creepiest smile imaginable. He mockingly asks why she seems so tense and impatient. Miria coldly tells the pig responsible for all this to step aside unless he is asking for a fight. Genuinely surprised, the ruler Rudman admits he suspected she had been investigating him for quite some time. Unfortunately for her, she simply figured it out too late. When Miria demands to know what that means, he calmly declares that the day of judgment has arrived. The balding potato sighs, revealing he originally planned to delay this event, but the two rats snooping around his laboratory forced his hand. More specifically, he realized that the real threat to his grand plan is Jin. Every instinct in his gut warned him that the new instructor would become the biggest headache imaginable, just like Mary's brother. Without needing confirmation, he already knows Jin was the one who uncovered the hidden passage. Deciding he has wasted enough time talking, he concludes it is best to eliminate all witnesses right here. Miria almost laughs at the idea that he believes he can defeat her. A disturbingly demonic grin spreads across Rudman's face as he boasts about the unimaginable power he has gathered. What he does not realize is that a girl is quietly creeping up behind him with a pot larger than his own head. Miria nervously sweats, torn between fear for the girl and doubt over whether this ridiculous plan will actually succeed. Without hesitation, Hakama swings with everything her tiny arms can muster and smashes the fat villain's lard-filled head. Miria stares at her in shock and wants to know how she even found this place. Hakama hurriedly explains that she came looking for Jin. There is absolute chaos outside, and it will be impossible to save everyone without their guardian. On the way she ran into another new student, Kudo. The girl mentioned that their professor entered the storage room not long ago. The new girl feels slightly guilty about knocking. Another new student, Kudo. The girl mentioned that their professor entered the storage room not long ago. The new girl feels slightly guilty about knocking out a teacher, but Hakama insists the creep deserved every bit of it. Besides, since he never saw their faces from behind, they could easily pin the blame on the blonde princess if things go south. At that moment, Jin finally reaches the top of the stairs. Concerned, he asks what happened, only to spite a floppy pig on the floor like a fallen bowling pin. Hakama quickly snaps him out of it and informs him that the city outside has descended into complete chaos. He is not surprised at all, because he already knows there is only one destination the labs and invaders could have been sent to. Miria turns pale as the realization hits, and the three of them rush outside without wasting another second. Fires rage across the city, and nearly half of it lies in ruins. Carried citizens scatter in every direction as the abyss breaks loose. Among all the invading creatures, one monster that looks like the hulking Viljek stands out as the strongest by far. Seeing her beloved home reduced to the state leaves Miria completely speechless. Meanwhile, Jin feels the weight of failure crush his chest again, thinking he should have destroyed the device when he had the chance. Hakama snaps him back to reality again. She points at the massive tentacle monster, which is charging up a devastating attack aimed straight at the royal palace. Determined to atone for his mistake, Jin uses the injection Kagura left behind for him. After using it, he gains a toned-down version of teleportation. The mad scientist had explained that the nanomachines only store enough energy to activate it once every 24 hours. On top of that, its range is supposedly limited to a short distance within the user's line of sight. However, those restrictions apply to ordinary users, and Jin is anything but ordinary, so someone of his caliber can practically teleport as far as his eyes are capable of seeing. Without meditating even a second, he vanishes and reappears directly in the path of the massive laser beam, just before it can strike the royal palace.